Hi class, we are so close to being done chapter 10. So our sixth lesson here, 10.6, samples and populations. So a population, we're just going to kind of go through, you kind of see this diagram at the top of the notes here. Let's just go through this real quick. A population is an entire group of people or objects. That's the entire population. Whereas a sample is only part of the population. Right? Which makes sense. If we think of our school as a whole, the entire population, if we just pull a sample and maybe survey a sample of them, that's only part of the school. And then we're going to interpret those samples and data in order to make some inferences. So real quick, an unbiased versus a biased sample. So think about the words unbiased versus biased. And you might have heard this before, these words, but unbiased, when there's an unbiased sample, that means that it is representative of the population. It's a good indicator. Those results are valid. We can kind of take those results and apply them and think of the whole population from there. So unbiased sample, it's representative of the population. It is selected at random and is large enough to provide accurate data. So important things, it has to be random and it has to be large enough. If it's random and large enough, then that is accurate. And then we again say that it is valid data. Whereas a biased sample does not properly represent the population as a whole. So one or more parts of the population are favored over others. So we would call this inaccurate data or not valid data. So if a sample group is being biased, then they're not going to give us good, valid results. So let's take a look. You want to estimate the number of students in a high school who ride the school bus. Which sample is unbiased? So again, if we're looking for an unbiased sample, you're thinking it's a random sample that we randomly pulled, and it's also large enough. We asked a good amount of people, and that's going to give us valid results to see the population as a whole. So if we're looking at who rides the school bus, which sample is unbiased? If they asked 4 students in the hallway, think about that. Is that a large enough group of students? No. So this would not be unbiased, so that won't be an answer. All the students in the marching band. So if they survey the marching band and ask who rides the school bus, will that give us valid results? It might be a decent sized group, but be careful. They're zoning in on one group of people. They're zoning in on the marching band. So they're kind of being biased. So we would say that's not a valid group. 50 seniors at random. 50 is a good amount, but they're only asking seniors. Do seniors typically ride the school bus? No, so they would probably say no, but that won't give us a good representation of the whole school. What about 100 students at random during lunch? So it's a nice large group, it's at random, and they're just randomly doing it at lunch. So I would say this is the unbiased group. It's random and it's large enough. So that's going to give us a nice unbiased answer. All right, let's keep moving here. You ask 75 randomly chosen students how many movies they watch each week. If there are 1,200 students in the school, predict the number of students in the school who watch one movie per week. So this represents your results from surveying 75 people randomly. So we know these are valid results. That's a good amount of people. It was random. Now these are your results. We want to know out of 1,200, how many can we predict watch one movie per week? In their sample, 21 out of 75 watched one movie per week. So if we now have 1,200 students, how many can we expect watch one movie per week? So we would just solve this proportion. Again, a lot of us, I know, love to cross multiply, so go ahead and do that if you need to. But somehow you solve for x, and when you do, you should get 336. So we would predict that 336 students watch one movie per week in our school. And our last example here, you want to know how the residents of your town feel about adding a new stop sign. Determine whether each conclusion is valid and justify your decision. So we're saying whether or not these would give us valid results. So let's look at the first sample. It says you surveyed 20 residents who live closest to the new stop sign. 15 support the sign and 5 do not. So you're going to conclude that 75% of the residents of your town support the new sign. Now guys, be careful about this. They're only surveying 20 residents, and their surveyed wasn't random. They didn't just randomly survey people in the town. They asked people that live the closest to the sign. Wouldn't you assume that people who live near the sign like it because it's keeping them safe? So this would not give us valid results. So this is not valid because the data they polled is biased. How about part B? If they surveyed 100 residents at random, 40 support the new sign and 60 do not. So you conclude that 40% of the residents of your town support the new sign. I would say this is valid because, again, it's a large enough group and it was randomly done. They randomly asked 100 people in the town how they felt about it. So this is an unbiased sample group, meaning it's going to give us valid results. All right, that is our 6th lesson here. You're going to do a bunch of examples telling whether samples are valid or biased and unbiased. So talk to me if you need further definitions and further examples walked through with you, but hopefully you understand the difference between biased versus unbiased.